Bore da, chroeso, good morning, and welcome to this hybrid meeting of the Environment, Regeneration and Street Scene Services Scrutiny Committee on the 2nd of December 2022. I am Councillor Sean Percy and I'll be chairing this meeting this morning. Just to make everyone aware, this meeting will be recorded. Please can you ensure your phones are switched to silent during the meeting and that your microphones are muted when you're not speaking, both in the chamber and at home. If you wish to speak or ask a question, please could you raise your electronic hands or raise your hand in the chamber. For the purpose of the next agenda item, which is declarations of interest, I can confirm we've chosen to scrutinise agenda items 7, 8, 9 and 10 and the private item 20 on the Cabinet Board papers. So I'll move on to agenda item 2, which is declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest from members this morning? I can't see any.
Yeah, Chair, I don't see any. Oh, sorry.
I did check regarding item number 7, Godric Gregg School, and I don't have to declare an interest, okay?
Okay, thanks, Ros. That's great. So I'll move on now to agenda item 3, which is the minutes of the previous meeting. That's included on pages 5 to 10 of the scrutiny agenda. I understand we do have a member who wants to make a comment on the minutes. Councillor Goldup John.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It was just with regards to the bus subsidy point. I did request in the last meeting that we have a written response from, or have the Cabinet member and the lead officer to write to the Welsh Government to ask for an update to the buses, the one ticket, one system, one network plan that the Welsh Government are proposing, and I didn't notice it in the minutes, so I just wanted that reflected and to see if there was an update, basically. Thank you.
Yes, Chair, what we can do is agree it's subject to that amendment to the minutes if you're happy with that.
Yeah, no problem. Did any other members have any comments to make on the minutes? Okay, so subject to the amendment, I suppose, that or clarification that Nathan's put forward, can I have a proposal and a seconder to approve the minutes? Oh, sorry, Dave, did you want to come in?
Oh, no, sorry. No, sorry. Apologies. Carry on with the amendment. But I have got I could give you an update.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, can I get a proposal and a seconder then?
I propose that, Chair.
Was that
second, Chair?
Wayne Carpenter, second. Yeah, Dave, in terms of an update, if you could circulate that to members outside the meeting so we can move on with the agenda,
that's fine.
I appreciate
Yeah.
that. Okay,
Okay.
thank you. So I'll now move on to pre-decision scrutiny and move over to the Cabinet Board papers. And we will start with item number 7, which is the Godric Gregg School scheme. There are a number of options outlined in the report. Officers are recommending option 3. So it's here for decision on pages 29 to 138 of the papers. Officers, is there anything you'd like to add to the report before we go to questions from members?
No, thank you, Chair. No further updates in relation to the report, so happy to go to questions.
Okay, thank you. I've got a question down from Councillor Cathy James. Cathy?
Thanks, Chair. On option 3, it does specifically say that the costs for the demolition option don't include the costs for site reinstatement or the construction of the new barrier bund. Is it possible, though, to provide some sort of vague ballpark figure for that? Because obviously one of the strongest one of the arguments for option 3 is the fact it is so much cheaper. So I think it would be helpful to have an idea how much might be added to that for the site reconstruction. Thank you.
Yeah, if I may respond then, Chair. Thank you, Councillor James. The budget price that we provided back in 2021 from the consultant does include the remediation of the site and its landscaping. So what we're uncertain about at the moment, obviously, is that was a budget estimate. We haven't done the detailed design at this stage until members choose which option they wish to pursue. But that's in the ballpark figure. What we have seen is cost increases in labour and materials as of late. So I would suggest that once we've been to tender, that figure could increase by 15%, but it will depend upon market conditions at the time. So as I say, we need to do the detailed design before we can fix that cost. But for budgeting purposes, in terms of the council's capital programme, we're suggesting that figure for the time being.
That's great, thank you.
Okay, were there any other indications on this item, members? I can't see any comments from members. So the recommendation.
Excuse me, Chair. I think.
Oh.
Hold on.
Roger's trying to speak.
Sorry, I tried to put my hand up. I don't know, my laptop isn't working too good this morning.
That's okay, Rose, go
Um,
ahead.
I'm only going to say that it's been a very difficult 3 years regarding the school building. And of course, there have been quite a number of meetings with residents and with the school, the governors itself. And of course, a lot of people are still not convinced, as you know, that the tip is actually very unsafe, and they still can't understand that it won't affect the houses surrounding the school. And of course, there have been many meetings and a lot of people have been very vociferous. And I would like to thank the officers for attending the meetings. They haven't had an easy time, and it's a very difficult decision to have to make when you lose a school in a community. Thank you.
Thanks, Ros, for those comments there. Okay, if I now just draw members' attention to the recommendation listed on page 35 of the agenda pack, and also to the fact that this item is subject to an amended IIA that was circulated yesterday, just for members to note that as well. So in terms of that recommendation on page 35, which is to approve option 3, can I please have a proposer and a seconder for that? Councillor Freegard proposed. Seconder?
I
I'll
second, Chair.
second.
I think I heard Cathy out of that group. Okay, can I ask if anyone wishes to abstain from the vote? Please raise your electronic hand. Or your hand in the chamber, of course.
I don't see any, Chair.
And now, if members do not indicate to the contrary, then I will take it that this decision is supported to Cabinet Board. So please only raise your hands if you wish to vote against this item.
I don't see any hands raised, Chair. So that recommendation has been supported to Cabinet.
Excellent, thank you. So I'll now move on to agenda item 8, which is the additional works programme. Officers, did you wish to add anything to this report?
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Mike. So I've got a few questions on this item, actually. So the first question is from Councillor Goldrick-John. Nathan.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate that every bus shelter is different and the locations make it so that costing it might be slightly different to say it costs X amount of money. But I would really appreciate it if we could have some sort of catalogue to really understand how far this £300,000 could go in terms of providing bus shelters through the borough. It could mean that we could provide 3 or we could provide 300. I don't know, and I think it would be beneficial for residents and ourselves to understand where we can have new bus shelters. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Nathan. Mike, you able to come back on that one?
Yes, if I could clarify, please. This is work to existing bus shelters, so it's not new bus shelters. There's a number of bus shelters, about a dozen, that are high priority bus shelters that are currently being renewed or refurbished under existing funding. After that, there's 203 priority 2 bus shelters with all sorts of issues, and panels missing, issues with roofs, seating, whatever. And with this funding, we expect to get a long way through that list of priority 2 shelters with the amendments. So there'd be lots of improvements across a range of bus shelters across the county borough with this money.
Okay, thanks. Nathan, did you want to come back?
Yes, please, if that's okay. So can I just clarify what you categorise as a renewal, please? Thank you.
A renewal would be taking the bus shelter away and replacing it with a new bus shelter, and whether that would be obviously it depends on the existing and the site, whether you can have an enclosed shelter or cantilever shelter or cantilever with end panels, or whether there's an existing masonry bus shelter there. So it does depend on the location, but we're talking about in the main it will be refurbishing those category 2 shelters across the borough. So where there's problems with roofs, where there's panels missing, where there's end panels missing, seats missing, whatever, that we'd be renewing all that, improving those situations.
Okay, thank you. And then the ones that you completely remove, will it be a like-for-like replacement, or is it subject to the site?
It is subject to the site. I mean, they would be like that, but if there is a room for improvement, perhaps a cantilever might not have any end panels, but it could have 2 smaller side panels might fit, which might just help to improve the shelter that people get from the bus shelter. Then I'm sure we could look at that as part of the work.
Okay, in which case then, if it isn't exactly like for like, is it still possible to get some sort of catalogue to understand the pricing of these new shelters that you would be replacing or renewing, just so we know as members it's roughly £5,000 for a cantilever bus shelter?
Yeah, I'm sure we could give you a bit of a menu that how much it would be for it. Certainly for the standard shelters, whether it's enclosed. Obviously they come in different sizes, but we could give you some costs so you can see the indicative costs, no problem.
That would be perfect. Thank you very much, Mike.
Thank you. So I've now move on to Laura. I think you had a question around the financial years the spend was over.
Yeah, so I can't see in the report that it states the exact financial years. I know there's been 2 press releases around this, one of them being March, meaning that this money might have started to be spent already. So to clarify that, I want to know, has some of the money been spent already? If so, where's it been spent and how much is actually left?
Right, none of the money's been spent already, because obviously you haven't approved the expenditure yet. In terms of the profile in the existing budget, there's 750k in the current year, and then the following year for the clean up, green up money that was improved as part of the budget, and the other monies that have come from Welsh Government effectively sit in this year's budget. But of course, as it's capital money, we can profile that and slip the money into next year. So we're committed to spending this money in the report within 18 months.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Kathy, did you have an additional point to make regarding the profile of the spend? Or are you happy with that answer?
Michael's just answered it. So yes, I was going to ask specifically about the Welsh Government money, but he's clarified that now. Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Friga, did you have a question here as well?
Yeah, I did. But before I ask my question, could I just ask if on the forward work programme on item 5, we did record that members wanted to have an update on progress with Boroughs Yard. Just want to make sure that was on record.
Okay, thanks.
Right, my question on this is just clarification really, because I know Welsh Water and our officers have been working on the flood area down in Talbot, and it was raised that we need to do significant work in cleaning up the gullies. So I just want to make sure that we've got the budget money for that, If we haven't, then obviously we'd need perhaps to modify the allocations on this. So it's just really clarification really on that point. Thanks.
Okay.
Couple of things, Chair. Of course, drainage is one area that wasn't particularly affected over the years of austerity. It was a protected area, for one. Secondly, the council put in an additional drainage gang, so it has had additional resources to do more work across the county borough. And in that specific issue on Talbot Road, that's a combined sewer, and as I understand it, Welsh Water have committed to inspect and de-silt all that pipe work during this month now, December.
Chair, can I come back, please?
Yeah.
Yeah, Welsh Water have agreed to desanitise, and they went through the works in detail with us and with the officers, Mike. But they were saying that for it to work successfully, we need to clear out the gullies, and that was significant, and that was agreed to by the officers. I just want to make sure that there's money in the budget for it. That was last week.
Okay, but in revenue terms, like I say, we have an additional revenue gang, so it's paid for by revenue, which is available for doing work across the borough. And we also have the big whale jetting machine, the one that cost the council best part of £250,000. We've got that machine, which is very good, which can do an awful lot of work, that type of work, and that's paid for under the revenue budget as well.
That's fine then, as long as that's confirmed. Thanks.
Thanks. Okay. I can't see any other indications on this item. So I will draw your attention to the recommendation on page 141 of the Cabinet Board agenda pack. Could I have a proposer and a seconder, please?
I propose, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Goldup-John.
Second, Chair.
And seconded by Councillor Wyn Carpenter. Could I now ask if anyone wishes to abstain from the vote to please raise your hand? I can't see any abstentions. Do you want to just confirm?
Yeah, sorry, Chair, I can confirm there's no abstentions as well.
And now, if members don't indicate to the contrary, then I will take it this decision is supported to Cabinet Board. So please only raise your hands if you wish to vote against this item.
I don't see any raised hands at home or in the chamber, Chair, so that recommendation is supported to Cabinet Board.
Excellent, thank you. So I'll now move on to item 9, which is the Healthy Travel Charter. This is on page 149 to 320 of the Cabinet Board papers as well. Officers, was there anything additional you wanted to add to this report before we go to questions from members?
No, thank you, Chair. We'll go straight to questions.
Okay, so the first question I've got is from Councillor Cathy James. Cathy.
Thanks, Chair. I'm fully in favour of this. It's a great initiative and very much something that we should be signing up to. It does say in the report that as signatories, we would commit resources to implement the elements of the Charter. It would be useful to know what level of resource is going to be committed, both in terms of staffing and funding, because obviously there's no point signing up to this if we haven't got the capacity to actually fulfil the requirements.
Yeah, if I may respond, Chair. Thank you, Councillor James, for the questions. Yeah, it was a concern of mine initially when when I was first invited to sit on the forum where the Swansea Bay Healthy Travel Region. Having sat on there, I could see that many of the strands that we're already delivering within the council as part of our decarbonisation agenda, our EV strategy around fleet, and the work specifically that is led by Joy Smith in the road safety team around safe routes in communities, around our training programs and our walking and cycling programs, all support the healthy travel charter that we would which we're proposing today to sign up to. What I found in the meetings were that it's as much about learning good practice from the partners within that forum and the good practice that we can share with them as well. So it wasn't just about the element of resource. What I would say is that Joy has got people already delivering these work strands within our team. So there will be a staff commitment to attend the sort of quarterly meetings and to do a self-assessment of the council corporately in terms of the Healthy Travel Charter. Of course, this doesn't just relate to environment, it's a corporate charter. So there are other activities that are also taking place across the authority, primarily because we need to do it anyway. So there's a corporate travel group where there are already resources in being that are working towards these principles in any event. In terms of any cash resource, then that will be determined through us applying and sourcing grants wherever possible. So at this moment in time, we're not committing financial resource, it's a human resource. But as I say, there are elements within our works programs that will contribute to this this arrangement. So hopefully that sort of clarifies for you, Councillor James, our position.
Yes, that does. Thank you very much. And it's great to hear that a lot of this is already happening. So no, that's lovely. Thanks.
Okay, thanks both. I've got an indication now from Councillor Goldup-John as well. Nathan.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I would just like to support the comments that Cathy James said, but just also to add to them is that whilst I totally endorse this document and I think it's great, these are things that a lot of local authorities have been doing for years and years and years. And how I see it is this is the flow, and we need to be way more ambitious than what we currently are. A lot of these aren't actually how I see barriers to active travel. The biggest barrier to active travel is actually designing good quality segregated cycle lanes so people feel safe whilst on the highway, whilst on the carriageway, so then they can get to work or see a friend, enjoy their time in Neath or Talbot. But better, you know, that's the main barrier. This morning, I didn't cycle here because it was in rush hour traffic, and none of these interventions would have necessarily made me cycle here instead. It would have been a good quality active travel lane. So I think in conjunction to this document, if possible, I think, Dave, if we could have like an indicative plan of maybe what we're planning as a local authority to try and roll out, that would be very beneficial, because then it's not just a siloed plan to say, let's promote cycle training and maintenance. It's because that will help you ride your bike. Thank you.
Thanks, Nathan. Dave, did you want to come back?
Yes, thank you, Nathan, for highlighting those points, which are very valid. Obviously, we know that the provision of the active travel routes is really the fundamental driver to make that modal shift, where people feel safe, being able to ride on our highway network. There's two things really. As part of this charter, there will be a structured action plan that will be developed around what we can do for the staff, specifically because this is about staff within the organisation. And in terms of the wider active travel work, the department are currently looking at consolidating the function under a single head of service because it's split at the moment. So we hope to do that in the next financial year, and there's been some budget commitment to enable us to expand the team so that we can have a much better focus on delivering active travel routes within the council. Obviously, Kerry's team have led on the development of the active travel map, and I know that you'll be more than familiar with that map. That sets out the council's ambition, and we will need to target and develop those routes that have now been approved by Welsh Government. So I'm hoping that the team that we put in place, and we'll be recruiting a couple of more engineers as well to help us put in more bids going forward, in the hope that they get grant support and that we can deliver more infrastructure as you've set out. So thank you, Chair.
Do you want to come back, Nathan?
No, just thank you, Dave, for that update. Really appreciate it.
Excellent. Just to pick up on one brief point there, Dave, was you mentioned there's going to be an action plan put together in relation to this document. Obviously, that was something I was going to ask for us to have a look at. Basically, I think we do need to, on each of these items, understand what the council is currently doing or going to do. So as that's being prepared, I'm sure committee members would appreciate that document being brought forward to a future meeting for us to look at, if you could do that.
Yes, absolutely. It's a key part, isn't it? Without the action plan, you can't see if there's any drivers for performance measurement there. As I mentioned earlier, we're currently going through the self-assessment process. Joy's leading on that. Joy's on the call. From that piece of work, we'll then be able to see, as Nathan pointed out, really where the gaps are and what we need to target for improvement. So yeah, we're more than happy, once we've developed that action plan, that we bring it back to the Scrutiny Committee. You can further review that, or we can even have a workshop with interested members to have an input into that action plan. And we can also bring it back to scrutiny. So yes, I'd welcome that, Chair.
Thank you. That sounds great. In terms of the timescale on the action plan being developed, have you got a rough indication of that at the moment?
Right, I'm going to have to defer now to Joy, who's been attending the meetings in my place the last couple of occasions. So Joy, do you mind coming in?
Yes, no, that's fine. Obviously, we haven't signed up to the charter yet. I've attended one meeting and had a separate meeting with those that chair. Once we've signed up, we will be looking at that self-assessment tool, and we will obviously be developing the plan. A lot of this work, as Dave has already said, has already either been undertaken, like our cycle to work scheme, or we'll be working towards putting it in place, like electric EV charging. So some of the things have already commenced, but there are some new innovative things in there as well that I'm hopeful that we're going to be spending the first sort of year embedding the sort of ethos of this into the culture of the authority, because as Dave has already said, it cuts across a number of all the directorates. It's not just environment. So the action plan is going to be developed following this meeting if we do sign up to the charter, and should be available, I would say, within the next 3 months for us to embed firmly from the start of the next financial year.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Joe. We look forward to it. So I can't see any other indications from members. So the recommendation on this item is listed on page 152 of the Cabinet Board agenda pack. Could I have a proposer and a seconder, please?
I propose, Chair.
John.
Happy to second, Chair.
Councillor Winchafter, thanks both. Can I now ask if anyone wishes to abstain from the vote to please raise your hand?
I don't see any hands raised, Chair.
Thank you. And now, if members do not indicate to the contrary, then I will take it this decision is supported to Cabinet Board. So please only raise your hands to vote against this item.
I don't see any hands, Chair, so that recommendation has been supported to Cabinet Board.
Excellent, thank you. So we'll now move on to item 10, which is Christmas parking 2022 on pages 321 to 328 of the Cabinet Board papers. Officers, did you want to add anything additional to this report before we go to questions?
No, nothing further to add to the report, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So my first indication is Councillor Goldup John. Nathan?
Thank you, Chair. talking a lot today, I can see. I want to preface this with saying, whatever I'm suggesting, I acknowledge that it won't come in time for the 11th of December in the time frame that you're saying. So just bear that in mind. I believe this policy to be very discriminatory against those people who don't own a car. This is only targeted at those people who own a car and is only accessible to those people who own a car. There are multiple people in my ward who catch the bus, as was my interest in one of the previous items, regularly, and this does not benefit them whatsoever. We look to neighbouring authorities, such as Swansea. Last year, they had subsidised bus transport. This year, they have subsidised bus transport during the Christmas period. And I see us and I think, well, why can't we do that? Why can't we benefit everyone? As the leader of Swansea Council, Rob Stewart, said, the Free Bus Initiative has been an incredible success over the last 12 months. And now the summer's here, there's another opportunity for everyone to benefit. This is in relation to them doing a swathe of subsidised bus transport and free bus transport through this past year. So that's, I don't really support this scheme. It really gets my back up a little bit, if I'm being quite honest, Steve. Because again, it's against Floyd by Newydd. It doesn't run in conjunction with what we're trying to do as a Welsh government and as a local authority. It's totally flipping the hierarchy back on its head. So I'd actually like to see you guys come back to us next year with some sort of proposals of how we can actually install subsidised bus transport during these periods, rather than just being given one option of free car parking. Thank you.
Thanks, Nathan. Dave, I'll call a few other members in because I know we had a sort of thorough discussion on this item in pre-briefing, and other members have got similar views, and so we've got. I'll bring in some of the other members first, and perhaps you can come in at the end. So my next indication was Councillor Dacey, Andrew Dacey.
Hello there. Thank you, Chair. I'll agree with this year's free parking, because we need to generate as much business within our shopping areas and our town centres. But I'd also like to agree with Nathan that we look into subsidising the bus service somehow as well, although the bus service has to improve as well to some of the areas, such as Goiter in Port Talbot, which is like one bus an hour or whatever. So it needs improving the transport, full stop, and I think it needs to be subsidised. But for this year, the free parking, I'd agree with it.
Thanks, Andrew. Councillor Freegard, Sharon.
Thanks, Chair. I just want to make a point, really, that many of the traders are disappointed that the scheme doesn't start sooner, because they feel that lots of people have done their Christmas shopping. Now, I know it's too late. Obviously, it's too late for this year. But please, could we consider starting the scheme? And obviously, it would be in conjunction with whatever comes back on Nathan's point. If we could start it sooner, because people do their Christmas shopping perhaps before the 11th of December. Not everyone, I know, but for the traders, it would be really helpful. Thank you.
Thanks, Sharon. I've also got Councillor Lynch, Stephanie Lynch. Steph.
Yeah, I just want to concur with what Councillor Dacey and Councillor Godot John has already said, that we bang on about active travel policy, and quite often active travel policy gets in the way of kind of other things we're trying to do. And this just seems a bit contradictory to that. We're kind of going against that policy. So yeah, I wonder whether we can look at the buses next time, because it's something that a lot of councils are doing, and we're kind of behind on that.
Okay, thanks, Stephanie. I've also got Tim Bowen. Tim, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It's just what everybody else has said, basically. But more on what Councillor Dacey said, we need to sort the buses out. We get a number of the buses up here in the day. I see them passing up, and I see them passing back down empty. So, perhaps we need to be looking at certain times of the day where we offer free bus services down for people to do Christmas shopping rather than on day. I know it might be going against what people times a day people can do it, but you know, it's seeing buses coming up and down, going back down empty. Most people rely on cars today, and that's the unfortunate thing. That's all I got to say. Thanks.
Thanks, Tim. And I've now got Councillor Cathy James as well. Cathy.
Thanks, Chair. I'd agree with everything that's been said so far. I think it's definitely a policy that needs to be reviewed for next year. With that in mind, I think this year we need to be doing some monitoring in terms of the uptake of the free parking, and if possible, any sort of information around the relative use of parking and public transport. I don't know what data is currently available, or if it would be possible to put a question to the citizens panel or something like that, just to get some sort of idea of the impact of the free parking. Because obviously, if people are mainly using the free parking just because they were driving into work anyway, or if they are driving in because it is cheaper than getting the bus in, that's obviously not an impact we want. So I think as part of this, it would be useful if we can have some sort of monitoring of what happens this year, so we can inform then the policy for next year.
Okay, thanks, Cathy. I'm going to call in Dave Griffiths now just to give a bit of a response before we come back to any other members. Dave.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I can see it's very topical subject matter. I think it's important to recognise that we were out of time this year, but and it's been very much an historic position where free Christmas parking has been given over many, many years by the authority, and I recognise that things have changed. Picking up on Councillor Nathan Goldup-John's point, it does fly in the face of policy. I recognise that as well. And, you know, there was an awful lot of points made this morning in that respect. What I can say is that the new administration has asked the parking service to review the arrangements going forward, and that includes the possibility of subsidised bus services over the festive period. Just for members to be aware and to put this into context, really, and it would be remiss of me not to do so. Obviously, we are facing quite a significant budget shortfall for next financial year, and probably for a number of years thereafter. And just to contextualise this, the current subsidised bus contracts that we have in our valley communities has increased by 50%. And to just keep those services going next year, the council face a £363,000 shortfall in being able to keep those valley services operational in terms of what are quite basic bus services at the moment. So obviously, as part of the budget setting round in January and February, members will be considering that position in terms of affordability. And then to compound it further, to raise and it's great. I mean, I'm fully supportive wherever we can provide subsidy around parking and bus services. That's the right thing to do. But we made inquiries this time last year of the major operator in Neath, Talbot. That was one of 5. And they came back with a cost, which was, from memory, around about £73,000 of subsidy to run a parallel service to that operated in the city and county of Swansea. Now, that was almost last time double what the free parking subsidy was. When you took the other operators into account as well, we were going north of £100,000 to subsidise bus services for the same period. So that's the sort of figure that we looked at last year. It's going to be north of that next year. I can certainly work with the operators and find out what those costs would be for members to evaluate and consider in reforming the parking and bus offer, not just perhaps at Christmas time, but maybe what you would like to do all year round. So we'll work on a piece of work with the parking services that's already in hand. We've also looked at the nearby offers in Swansea and Bridgend, where they've got a scheme at the moment which I think is £2 all day from 10 a.m. in the morning. So we are cost modelling that for members as well. So I'm hoping early in the new year we'd be able to bring a paper, perhaps to a workshop. Maybe again, Chair, we may need to have perhaps a scrutiny workshop or a cross group party of members to look at those options. I'm open to that suggestion, and happy to table everything that we can and things that we haven't thought of that members think they would like to look at as well. So yeah, I accept the comments this morning. They're all valid comments. As I say, we were a bit out of time. We found ourselves in an historic position. So it's, basically we status quo for this year is what we're recommending, but happy to look at new strategies going forward. With the caveat, of course, we've got this huge budget gap. So thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Dave, for quite a comprehensive response there. I guess just a couple of brief points to make, I suppose, and just from my point of view on the bus services and the costs around that. I think it's we've got to be careful not to understate what the economic benefit could be of that for businesses as well. It's not only car drivers that drive revenue into town centres. So I think although the cost may be higher to the authority, there may be a significant benefit to that. And I'm sure we can have a little look into some studies and data for this when we look at this in the new year. And I think members here have clearly got an interest in looking at this in the new year. I just want to pick up on Kathy's question around data and monitoring, which I don't think you answered. Just, I think if we're going to look at this and look at a different scheme next year, it would be good to understand the baseline this year. So if you can give us an indication what sort of data and monitoring we are planning to do, that would be really helpful.
Yes, you're right. I did forget it, and probably purposefully, maybe not. The problem with it, we have struggled with obtaining data, in all honesty, because we haven't got the technology at the moment within our car parks to actually record the data. So without putting and deploying our survey teams right across the car parking portfolio for the duration of the charging period, it's probably cost prohibitive indeed to do that, and probably haven't got enough resources to do it anyway. So that is a challenge for us. What we've had, and some of it's anecdotal, I suppose, is that where there are footfall monitoring data available, which we've had from Aberavon shopping centre in the past at the Christmas period, is that their footfall has increased by about 11% during the period of free car parking. Now, I'm not sure that that's all related to because we've got free car parking, because you'll tend to find more people coming into the centres shopping at the Christmas time anyway. So it's very anecdotal at the moment. I'm not quite sure what technology we can put out there. There is technology that we can look into, and I know Steve Cook actually showed me some technical data this week that may help, but again, I'm not sure that I don't think we can get it in place by the 11th of December, in all honesty. So we are struggling to to evidence that. I think Simon, and I'll call on Simon, I think we've got footfall, or we did have some footfall data monitoring in the town centre in Neath as well, but I'm not sure if that's still operational. I know it was done a couple of years ago, Simon, whether we can use that to perhaps inform what the footfall is over the town centres. And just picking up on Kathy's comment, I'm not sure how to look into the citizens panel you said on what the effect of that may be, or whether our town centre manager can work with the centres to speak with the traders to see if they think it was beneficial. I think there's a number of perhaps tools that we might be able to use to glean some data.
Okay, thanks, Dave. Simon, did you want to come in on the monitoring in Neath?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just to say the Neath Town Centre footfall was previously monitored by the Neath bid.
Right.
Expired. So that when the bid finished, we lost that. But we have been looking at some alternatives for both Neath and Port Talbot and some of the other town centres, either by using the sort of counters, which are they give you an indication, but they don't give you the whole story. But we've been looking at packages around understanding a little more about spend and dwell time, which gives us some more reasonable information about how people use our town centres and what they use them for. So we're currently working on that at the moment.
Excellent, thanks for that, Simon. I guess something I'll add on data, I suppose, is whether we can get some baseline data from the bus companies, particularly if we're considering potentially subsidising services next year to some extent. If we could get some baseline kind of user figures for this year over the Christmas period, that might be a useful starting point for comparison. Obviously, we definitely know we've got data with the shopping centre. I'm not sure how readily accessible that is to us. That might give us something to look at. I've got a couple of members that want to come back briefly. I think Nathan raised hand in the chamber, and then I've got Councillor Tim Bowen as well.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for this discussion. It sounds really positive, doesn't it? So that's a good thing to hear. I was just wondering, the £50,000 that's being proposed to subsidise the car parking, what pot of money is that coming from to start off with? And then maybe I can come back if it's warranted. If that's okay, David?
Yeah. Yes, it's an interesting one, really, because ever since I can remember, there's been free parking over the Christmas period, and the parking account doesn't budget for income during that period. So there is no budget per se. What we tend to do in terms of the calculation is we'll look at the average income taken throughout the year. And also we've done some specific analysis either side of Christmas as well, haven't we, Steve, in the past, to try and put a figure on this. So it's based upon income taken, basically the average of all year round. So it may be an underestimation, it might be a slight overestimation, but it's the best we could estimate what we think would be the income if you actually charged. Now, I don't know if every local authority, it'd be interesting to know across the country what they do. A lot of business would obviously say, well, you're giving the free charging at the very wrong time of the year, when you should be charging for people that are coming into the town centres then, because that's, as a council, you're going to raise your most income. Now, that's a bit controversial, I guess, and not what members would like to hear, or traders. But if you were NCP car parks, that's when they get their big income, and at other key times of the year. So there's no actual budget loss. What we're saying, Councillor Nathan, is if you did charge, this is the sort of income that we think you would have as additional income. And therein lies the challenge, really, in setting or the balancing act to play off as to what will encourage trade and growth in our town centres, or for that matter in our areas where we've got tourism attractions, is which way do you pitch it really? And I think that's the big challenge that well, as officers and members, we both collectively face, because we've got to manage our budget and try and continue to deliver services for yourselves and the communities, vis-a-vis being able to give free offers and subsidies. And that's the real challenge really, and we look forward to working with you through that process in the new year.
Thanks, Dave.
Can I come back?
Oh, sorry, Nathan. Not sorry. Sorry, Councillor Chair. I can get the data for you from the bus companies. That will be readily available. I'm sure they'll share that information, so that will inform the position around people travelling by bus into the centres at the Christmas period.
Thank you. Nathan, you can come back briefly.
Yes, please. Thank you. So just for clarity, it's £50,000 that we're not collecting. So would you say, first question, that's a conservative estimate? And second question, would that £50,000 go quite a long way to the £73,000 that you stated that First Cymru would request for subsidised or free bus transport in the borough during the Christmas period for the month? So then in actual fact, we'd only be looking for £23,000, which could be potentially raised from some other avenue.
Yes, that's right. If you could offset, if you decided to charge over Christmas periods to cross subsidise potentially bus services. The other aspects, of course, when we come forward with options for members around the parking strategy, there are always risk items when you, there's always a risk when you look at reducing charges and increasing charges. It's a little bit unknown in many respects. You could drop the price to £2 all day, for example, after 10 o'clock, and you might see increased income. But you might have less people actually coming into the centre. Or if you did put the hourly rates up, then you could also gain more income, and then reduce footfall. So it's a bit of a black box in all honesty. But going back to your point, Nathan, yeah, you could, if we're able to raise income in the other areas, we might be able to cross subsidise other initiatives. But again, I suppose our finance director would be saying, hang on, Dave, we've got a £40 million budget cap next year that you've got to address. So, as I say, it's all got to be looked at in that wider corporate financial position as well.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, members. I've got a few more indications coming in. I'm just conscious we're kind of having the January New Year discussion today now a little bit. But I will take the last few indications we've got and then try and round this item off, because I think we've all got plenty to contribute to this discussion once we've got that information in the new year. So I've got Councillor Tim Bowen first. Tim?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And Dave, brilliant what you've been saying, and I can understand that we've got hell of a footfall with the buses next year, the increase and everything. My question is, we're all asking for data on people coming actually into the towns over the Christmas period, but how can we do it to actually say that these people are coming into the towns just to do the Christmas shopping, where they're not abusing the system, parking, moving on to work, coming in on the buses now because we've offered free bus service, just jumping on the bus, coming in, off to work, not spending any money in the towns, but we are subsidising these people now to go to work. I know it was brought up earlier about possibly an all-day ticket. Perhaps we need to look at people coming into the towns, that we give them a Sunday service where it's £1 all day. So at least we are still taking revenue in rather than, hitting our budget next year and starting to lose money again, and we got to start looking for money? That's my question.
Thanks, Tim. I think we can kind of note that as perhaps something to discuss when we're kind of weighing up all the options in the new year. I've got Simon. Did you want to come in, Simon, on something that's been raised?
Just very briefly, Chair, if I may. Obviously, I think we mentioned it earlier. The traders would no doubt have an opinion, I guess, on us taking away free parking. And they would see that as a challenge towards the town centre, I think, over the Christmas period. So we would have to have those conversations as well, I think, with our businesses around protecting our town centres to try and make sure our traders are able to compete with others over the Christmas period if everybody else is offering free parking, etc. I understand the conversation around the free bus offer, and I do accept that. But I think, we do have to be mindful, I think, of what our businesses would think over that period.
Okay, thanks, Simon. I think it's probably worth pointing out, I suppose, that we're discussing this through the lens of sustainable transport, and that is how we're required, I suppose, as an authority to consider these matters. And I think I'll bring back up the point I made earlier around the potential economic benefits from driving footfall through sustainable transport as well. And it may be that we need to do a bit of work, with the traders to engage with them on that and explain what the benefits might be of that as well. And I'm sure that will come out as we consider the options perhaps in the new year. Suzanne, do you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you very much. I wasn't going to ask a question, but it's come into my head now. Do we have any information on how many of the traders in our town centres offer online shopping? Or is that something that we just not got access to? Because I can see that quite a few people who would perhaps want to come in, for a Christmas visit and a lunch and whatever, might just order online rather than have to find parking, whether it's free or not, buses, whether they're running or not. So they just decide to buy online. So I just wondered if we had any information regarding the traders that we've got, whether they do online services. Do we have that information?
I don't have it to hand.
No,
not that I'm aware of. No,
okay.
Not that I'm aware of, Councillor Patterson.
Okay, Simon, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, members, officers. I think we've had a good discussion. I won't call you in now, Councillor Freegard. I think we've spent quite a long time on this item, if I'm honest.
May I come in, Chair, on just a final summary, perhaps summary?
Bear with me a sective. Okay. Councillor Freegard, do you want to just put your microphone
on? When Simon does go and discuss this with Viva, I know they do have data, and it may encompass what Councillor Patterson has just brought up as well. If they could drill down on their data, we could see some correlation with different periods, which will obviously be needed if we're going to change the date next year to bring it forward. I mean, if they've got that data that we can drill down in, at least it'll give us a bit of a yardstick rather than nothing at all. Thanks.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. And I think the one thing I just want to add, really, just in terms of engaging with the traders and Simon's point as well, I guess, my sense is the committee's not necessarily saying that we wish to take away free parking. It's about considering sustainable transport options as well. And I think there's going to be a range of options on how that could look. So I just think it was important to kind of clarify that, because that's the sense I've got from the discussion that we've had as a group today and in the pre-briefing. Yeah, Dave, happy for you to come back and just.
I was just going to ask, Chair, whether or not the scrutiny team within Democratic Services would facilitate the workshops, or whichever way we're going to approach it, and that perhaps we have an integrated approach to it. So I'll have parking, transport, and perhaps some representatives from Simon's team from the town centre side of thing and the traders side of thing, so that we get a rounded approach to that sort of review of the options.
Yeah.
And to take further any other proposals that members may like us to to get some additional information around.
Yeah, Dave, that's exactly what we can do. I think following today's discussion now, I think it's quite clear that the committee would be quite keen to have some sort of a task and finish or a workshop day, a one-day inquiry or something like that to work through the options that could potentially be there for next year's policy and be able then to put recommendations forward for the cabinet to consider. So yes, Dave, that's not a problem at all. We in Democratic Services will work that out with yourselves and we'll put something in the diaries.
Yeah, I think that'd be very helpful. That'd be great, actually. Thanks.
Excellent. Okay. So I will now bring members' attention to the recommendation, which is listed on page 323 of the Cabinet Board agenda pack. Could I please have a proposer and a seconder for this? Proposed from Sharon Freegard and seconder.
I second.
Happy to second.
I second that.
I got Wayne Carpenter in the chamber. Can I just ask if anyone wishes to abstain from the vote, please raise your hand now. Okay, I've got one abstention. Councillor Goldup John.
I can confirm I can just see one abstention for today.
Okay, and now to the vote. If members do not indicate to the contrary, then I'll take it this decision is supported to Cabinet Board. So please only raise your hands to vote against this item.
I can't see anyone against the recommendation, Chair. So as we've only had one abstention, that recommendation has been put forward to Cabinet Board for consideration today.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, bear with me 1 second, just get my agenda ready. Okay, so I'll just bring members back to the scrutiny agenda before we head into the private item. To item 5, which is the forward work programme and action log. I know, Councillor Freegard, you mentioned Burroughs Yard earlier in the meeting. Do you want to just briefly make those comments at this point, just so that?
Yeah, we did agree that we'd like an update on Burroughs Yard every quarter when we have the figures, just to see what progress is being made so that we can see how the project's going.
So just for clarity, this was a request that was made in the forward work programme workshop. So that is being it's being programmed in at the moment. So that is being considered.
Yeah, I couldn't see it in this forward work
It's
programme.
a
There was
draft,
no
but-
comment from an officer on it. So if we could have it in future, it'd be grateful.
Hopefully by the time we have the next meeting, the forward work programme will be a bit more populated than it is at the moment. There's still discussions ongoing. I don't know if officers want to add to that.
Yes, so members, we're still in the process of fully populating the forward work programme following the forward work programme session. But just a few points that have been raised from today. So I know Councillor Freegard, you've obviously mentioned Burroughs Yard, which was a topic that was mentioned before. But we also will include the action plan that's been mentioned from today. And obviously we'll be looking to organise the task and finish group in relation to the Christmas policy, parking subsidies and things like that for next year. So we'll include those as well, if that's okay, Chair.
Yeah, that's fine. Simon, have you got anything?
Just if you would like me to, I can give a comment on the Burroughs Yard development in private, Chair.
Okay, it's not on the agenda for today, but
Okay.
yeah, if you can, yeah, we'll pop on the forward work programme. That's no problem, Simon. Okay, so just moving to the scrutiny agenda, item 6, I don't have any urgent items today, so I'll now move on to item 7, which is to access to meetings in order to move in to private session. Bear with me, members. I'm just trying to find my paragraph I need to read for private. Okay, yeah, so agenda item 7, access to meetings to resolve to exclude the public for the following items pursuant to section 100A, parts 4 and 5 of the Local Government Act 1972 and the relevant exempt paragraphs of part 4 of Schedule 12A of the above Act. Could I please have a proposer and a seconder to move into private? Nathan Goldup John.
Happy to second, Chair.
Seconded by Councillor Wayne Carpenter. If members don't indicate to the contrary by raising your hands, I will assume you are in favour of moving into private session.
Chair, we will stop the recording now and just double check that all public have left.
Thank you.